From a young age, we are taught that debt is something to be avoided at all costs. Parents and teachers warn us about the dangers of spending beyond our means, how interest can trap us in an endless cycle of payments, and most importantly, how owing money is synonymous with financial irresponsibility. But what if I told you that the wealthy think completely differently? Robert Kiyosaki, author of the best-selling Rich Dad, Poor Dad, challenges this traditional notion of debt and introduces us to a completely new perspective, the idea that debt can be used as a tool to build wealth. While most people see debt as a burden, the rich view it as a powerful lever to multiply their earnings and accelerate their financial independence. But how does this work in practice? Why do some people drown in debt while others use the same resource to become even wealthier? The answer lies in the difference between good debt and bad debt. While bad debt drains your money, good debt can put you on the path to prosperity. And understanding this difference is the first step to escaping the rat race and building a solid financial future. In this guide, we will explore how the wealthy use debt to invest, generate cash flow, and build assets that work for them. We'll understand why banks love lending money to those who know how to use it wisely and how you can apply these concepts to your own life. If you believe that all debt is bad, get ready for a radical mindset shift. More than that, get ready to understand the financial game as it is truly played by those at the top. Most people see debt as a trap to escape from as quickly as possible. But what if, instead, you learn how to make it work in your favor? They associate debt with anxiety, stress, and often financial ruin. And they're not entirely wrong. Debt can be a real nightmare for those who don't know how to manage it. But what many people fail to realize is that debt can also be a powerful tool when used strategically. Robert Kiyosaki explains that there are two types of debt: bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is the kind that takes money out of your pocket. These are loans used to buy things that depreciate over time, like a financed car, a maxed-out credit card filled with unnecessary purchases, or a personal loan to cover everyday expenses. This type of debt drains your income and generates no financial return. It's what traps most people in the endless cycle of working just to pay bills. On the other hand, good debt is the kind that puts money into your pocket. This is the type of debt the wealthy use to acquire assets, investments that generate passive income and appreciate in value over time. Imagine, for instance, that you take out a loan to buy a rental property. If the rental income is enough to cover the loan payments and still leave you with a profit, that debt is working in your favor. You've used the bank's money to acquire an asset that creates positive cash flow, and this is exactly what the wealthy do. But this strategy isn't limited to real estate. Entrepreneurs and investors use debt to expand businesses, acquire companies, buy stocks, or invest in opportunities that grow their wealth. When leveraged wisely, debt can be a stepping stone to financial freedom rather than a financial burden. The logic behind this is simple. If you can use borrowed money to generate a return greater than the cost of that money, then debt becomes a tool to accelerate your financial growth. However, caution is essential. Using debt to build wealth doesn't mean recklessly taking out loans. The wealthy know exactly how to calculate risks and ensure that the return on their investments exceeds the interest paid. They understand the numbers, study opportunities, and make decisions based on financial logic, not emotion or impulsiveness. If you grew up hearing that the key to financial stability is avoiding debt and saving money in the bank, this new perspective might be difficult to accept. But think about this. Why are banks always willing to lend money to those who already have money? And why are the wealthy constantly acquiring assets using borrowed capital, while the middle class and the poor either avoid debt altogether or use it to buy depreciating consumer goods? The answer lies in how each group understands money and risk. The wealthy see debt as a capital multiplier. Instead of relying solely on their own money to invest, they use other people's money, whether from banks, investors, or financing, to acquire assets that generate even more money. This concept is known as financial leverage. Let's illustrate this with a practical example. Imagine two people, Joe and Carlos, who both want to invest in rental properties. Joe has 200,000 reals and decides to buy one apartment in cash, which will earn him 1,500 reals per month in rental income. Carlos, on the other hand, uses his 200,000 reals as a down payment to finance 4 apartments, worth 200,000 reals each. With proper financial planning, your debt could have become a problem instead of an advantage. That's why the wealthy don't just use debt, they use it wisely. But this logic isn't limited to real estate. Entrepreneurs use debt to expand their businesses, purchase equipment, hire employees, and increase production capacity. Investors use margin credit to leverage stock market operations. Giant corporations take out billions in loans to acquire competitors and strengthen their market position. The key to using debt as a wealth-building tool is understanding how to turn borrowed money into productive assets. But before diving into specific strategies, it's crucial to develop a financial mindset different from the one we were taught in school and by society. Most people see credit as a tool to bring future consumption into the present. They use credit cards to buy electronics, clothes, and vacations they couldn't afford up front. They take out loans to upgrade their cars even when their current vehicle is still functional. This behavior is encouraged by banks and financial institutions that profit from the interest on these consumer debts. The problem is that these purchases generate no financial return. On the contrary, they lose value over time and add expenses like maintenance, taxes, and insurance. The wealthy, however, use credit to acquire assets, things that put money into their pockets instead of taking it out. Imagine you have the opportunity to buy a small business that generates profit every month, but you don't have the necessary capital to acquire it. Instead of waiting years to save up the money, an experienced investor could use financing to buy the business and start making a profit immediately. If the revenue generated exceeds the interest paid on the loan, the deal makes sense and becomes a wealth multiplier. Another classic example is in the stock market. Experienced investors use leverage to increase their exposure to financial assets. Instead of buying stocks only with their own capital, they use margin credit offered by brokerage firms to expand their investments. This can accelerate gains but also risks reinforcing the need for financial education before adopting this strategy. In the business world, companies apply this principle all the time. Large corporations don't hesitate to take out billion-dollar loans to expand their operations, launch new products, or acquire competitors. The reason is simple. If the return on investment is greater than the cost of the debt, the business grows faster than if it relied solely on its own capital. What sets the wealthy apart from everyone else isn't just access to credit, it's how they use it. While the middle class and the poor use debt to sustain a lifestyle they can't afford, the wealthy use it strategically to create more wealth. This fundamental difference in financial thinking determines who remains trapped in the cycle of scarcity and who moves toward financial freedom. But if using debt wisely is so advantageous, why do so many people still go into debt the wrong way? The answer lies in a lack of financial education and fear of the unknown. To change this, we need to understand the rules of the money game and learn to make financial decisions like successful investors and entrepreneurs. If there's one major barrier preventing most people from using debt to build wealth, it's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of taking risks, and fear of making financial mistakes. This fear doesn't come out of nowhere. It is conditioned over a lifetime, whether through negative experiences of family members who struggled with overwhelming debt or through the education system itself, which teaches us to seek security rather than financial knowledge. Robert Kiyosaki often points out that the lack of financial education is the main reason most people fear debt. They don't understand how it works, they don't know how to differentiate it, and as a result, they prefer to avoid it entirely. But while the middle class either runs from debt or uses it to buy liabilities, the wealthy use it as a tool to grow their wealth. These are the kinds of questions that successful investors and entrepreneurs ask themselves before making financial decisions. They understand that debt only makes sense when used to generate more wealth, not to sustain an artificially elevated lifestyle. A classic example of this strategy can be seen in real estate investors. Imagine a business person who finds an excellent opportunity to purchase a commercial property. Instead of paying in full, they choose to finance 80% of the purchase price through a bank loan. The property is then rented out to a company, generating a positive cash flow that exceeds the cost of the financing. In this case, debt not only allowed the investor to acquire an asset without tying up their own capital, but also created a source of passive income that grows over time. Another example is in the business world. Many entrepreneurs use lines of credit to expand their companies, increase inventory, or invest in marketing. Reinvested a them algo que gerara ainda mais dinheiro. If well planned, these financial decisions lead to more sales and growth, allowing the company to pay off the debt with the additional profits it generates. The key lesson here is that debt, when used strategically, can accelerate financial growth. But to achieve this, it's essential to adopt a different mindset from the one most people have. You need to think like an investor, not like a consumer. Changing your mindset about debt starts with a simple but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this debt?" the wealthy ask, "Can this debt make me richer?" This change in thinking completely transforms how we view money, investments, and even the opportunities around us. Many people associate wealth with accumulating money in a bank account. They believe that the more they save, the safer they will be. But the truly wealthy understand that financial security doesn't come from money sitting still. It comes from the ability to generate continuous cash flow. And this is exactly where debt leverage comes into play. When you realize that real wealth comes from owning productive assets, you begin to see opportunities where you once saw only risks. Financing a rental property, taking out a line of credit to expand a profitable business, or borrowing capital to invest in new technology or innovation, these can all be pathways to increasing income and accelerating financial growth. But the key lies in how these decisions are made. Buying the latest car, the newest smartphone, or a bigger house might seem affordable in the short term, but in the long run, these purchases become financial burdens that drain resources and prevent wealth accumulation. The second mistake is taking on debt without a clear financial return plan. When an experienced investor leverages debt, they know exactly how and when that debt will be repaid, and more importantly, they know that the borrowed money will be invested in something that will generate even greater returns. To create income that exceeds the cost of the debt. If debt can be such a powerful tool for building wealth, why do so many people end up drowning in it? The answer lies in the most common mistakes that keep them trapped in the cycle of bad debt. The first and most frequent mistake is using debt to finance a lifestyle beyond one's means. Many people believe that just because they can afford the monthly credit card or loan payment, they can buy whatever they want. This creates a dangerous cycle where their salary is constantly tied up in consumer debt. In contrast, the wealthy take on debt only after carefully calculating the risks and considering its impact on their budget. Those who don't do this end up with high interest rates, endless payments, and an increasingly tight financial situation. Another major mistake is not considering the real cost of debt. Many people are drawn to seemingly low monthly payments without realizing how much they will pay in total. A car loan, for example, might seem manageable at 1,200 reals per month, but by the end of the contract, the person may have paid nearly double the vehicle's original price. Meanwhile, that same money could have been invested in an asset that generates income and essentially pays for itself. Lack of planning and the absence of an emergency fund also push many people into bad debt. Medical emergencies, unexpected repairs, or even a period of unemployment can force someone to take out high-interest loans simply because they had no financial cushion. This creates a snowball effect, where debt piles up quickly and becomes a heavy burden to carry. Avoiding bad debt mistakes is only half the journey. The other half is learning to use debt wisely and strategically to build wealth. To do this, we must follow some fundamental rules that the wealthy apply when leveraging debt. The first rule is simple but extremely powerful. Debt should always generate positive cash flow. This means that any borrowed money must be used to create income that exceeds the cost of the debt, to acquire something that generates more money than the cost of the debt. If you take out a loan to buy a rental property, the rental income should be enough to cover the loan payments and still leave a profit. If you use a loan to expand a business, that money should be invested in something that increases sales and profits enough to pay off the debt and generate additional capital. The second rule is to never use debt to buy liabilities. This is the key difference between the wealthy and the middle class. The wealthy don't finance luxury cars or expensive homes that don't generate income. They finance assets that put money into their pockets. Once those assets grow and generate enough revenue, they can then buy luxuries without compromising their cash flow. The third rule is to understand the numbers before taking on any debt. This means calculating exactly how much return the investment will generate, what the costs will be, and how long it will take for it to become profitable. Many people go into debt believing things will work out in the future, but the wealthy don't rely on luck, they rely on math and strategy. Additionally, having a margin of safety is essential. The wealthy don't take on debt that leaves them vulnerable to market fluctuation. If a real estate investor buys a financed building, they calculate not only the profit in the best case scenario, but also the impact of potential interest rate hikes or a period without tenants. If an entrepreneur takes out a loan to expand their business, they ensure they have a contingency plan in case sales don't grow as expected. Another crucial factor is the relationship between assets and liabilities. While the middle class and the poor use most of their income to pay for liabilities, such as home loans, car payments, and consumer debt, the wealthy structure their financial lives so that their assets cover these costs. They use debt to acquire assets that generate enough income to pay for their luxuries, rather than compromising their own money or primary income. When these rules are followed, debt ceases to be a problem and becomes a wealth accelerator. But for this to work in practice, more than just theoretical knowledge is required. A clear action plan is necessary. Now that we understand the fundamental rules for using debt as a tool for wealth building, the next step is to structure an action plan to apply them in real life. This plan involves 3 essential pillars: financial education, leverage strategy, and risk control. Never take on debt without a clear exit plan. This means having financial reserves to cover unexpected situations, understanding the rates and costs involved, and avoiding excessive debt. The first pillar, financial education, is the foundation of everything. Before making any decision involving leverage, it is essential to study and understand concepts such as cash flow, return on investment, ROI, interest rates, and the difference between assets and liabilities. This can be done through books, courses, mentorships, or even by following experienced investors.
The key here is to shift your mindset regarding money and understand that wealth is not just about how much you earn, but how you make that money work for you.
The second pillar, leverage strategy, involves the practical application of this knowledge. The first step in structuring smart financial leverage is to define a clear objective. Do you want to use debt to invest in real estate, to expand a business, to acquire a financial asset? Each type of investment requires different planning, and it is essential to understand the details before committing to any financial obligation. For example, if your goal is to invest in rental properties, you need to analyze the market, study regions with strong appreciation potential, and calculate whether the rental income will cover the financing costs. If the plan is to expand a business, it is necessary to evaluate whether the demand for the product or service justifies the expansion and whether the increased revenue will be sufficient to cover the interest on the loan. Financial leverage can also be used to invest in the stock market, but this requires even more knowledge and risk control. Many investors use margin credit to expand their stock investments, but without a well-defined strategy, this practice can lead to significant losses. That is why the wealthy always conduct detailed planning before using any form of debt. The third pillar, risk control, is what separates those who build wealth through leverage from those who end up bankrupt due to poor financial management. A common strategy among successful investors is to use as little of their own money as possible while maximizing the use of other people's money, banks, investors, financial institutions, but always ensuring that the debt remains sustainable. This involves diversification, never relying on just one investment or a single income source, and continuously analyzing the market. With a structured plan and a mindset aligned with the principles of financial freedom, debt stops being an obstacle and becomes a driver of wealth growth. But there is still one crucial factor that holds many people back: the scarcity mindset. One of the biggest barriers preventing people from using debt as a tool for wealth building is not a lack of opportunities, but rather a scarcity mindset. This mindset makes people see money as a limited resource and debt as a danger, instead of viewing credit as a strategic tool. A scarcity mindset causes people to think small. They avoid investing because they fear losing money. They prefer saving instead of looking for ways to multiply their capital. And they believe that the only way to improve financially is by working more hours. This way of thinking keeps most people trapped in the rat race. They work hard, pay bills and bad debts, and never break free from this cycle because they don't know how to make money work for them. The wealthy, on the other hand, operate with an abundance mindset. They understand that money is always in motion and that the real secret to wealth isn't just earning more, but rather controlling cash flow and leveraging resources to create assets. They don't see debt as an enemy, but as a tool to accelerate their financial goals. This doesn't mean that the wealthy don't have financial concerns. It means they have learned to use the rules of the game to their advantage. While most people work for money, the wealthy make money work for them. They know that well-invested capital can generate even more capital, and that leverage can exponentially multiply their gains when used correctly. The shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset begins with education and action. When you start learning about investments, cash flow, and the strategic use of debt, you begin to see money differently. You realize that the wealthy aren't rich because they work harder or because they were born privileged, but because they think and act differently when it comes to financial opportunities. A clear example of this is how people handle the fear of debt. Someone with a scarcity mindset sees financing as a financial trap. Meanwhile, someone with an abundance mindset sees that same financing as an opportunity to acquire an asset that will generate income and pay off the debt on its own. The difference between those who build wealth and those who stay in the same place isn't just how much money they earn, but what they do with it. While some spend everything they make on consumer goods and liabilities, others use that money and even other people's money to create assets that will ensure your financial freedom in the future. But there is one last factor that separates those who manage to apply these concepts from those who only understand them theoretically: the ability to act and make strategic financial decisions. Understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt, developing an abundance mindset, and planning financial leverage strategies are fundamental steps to building wealth. But the decisive factor in turning knowledge into concrete results is strategic action. Knowing how to use debt to your advantage is useless if you don't know how to take the first steps safely and efficiently. The first step to using debt wisely is to start small and test your strategy. Many people believe they need large sums of money to start investing, but the truth is that learning comes from practice. If the goal is to invest in real estate, for example, one can start with a small finance department for rent and observe how cash flow behaves over time. If the focus is entrepreneurship, the best strategy might be a microloan or modest financing to test the market before expanding the business. The second step is to ensure that debt is always tied to a productive asset. This means that before taking on any financial commitment, a concrete income generation plan must be in place. If the asset is not capable of covering the debt costs and still generating profit, leverage stops being a tool and becomes a burden. The third step is risk control. The wealthy do not enter investments without first analyzing scenarios and creating contingency plans. They know that markets can fluctuate, crises can arise, and poorly planned leverage can be disastrous. That's why they always work with safety margins, avoid excessive debt, and diversify their investments. Another crucial point is avoiding the trap of false wealth. Many people begin to understand the concept of leverage, but end up using credit to finance a luxurious lifestyle instead of acquiring productive assets. This creates an illusion of wealth: new cars, big houses, expensive trips, but without sustainable cash flow. This illusion quickly falls apart, leading to financial ruin. The truly wealthy only increase their standard of living when their assets already generate enough income to sustain that lifestyle without compromising their financial growth. Finally, continuous learning is essential. The financial world is constantly evolving, and those who thrive are the ones who are always studying new investment strategies, analyzing market trends, and adapting to new opportunities. Now that we've reached the end of this journey, only one question remains. Are you ready to apply these principles and start using debt to build wealth? The decision is in your hands. If you enjoyed this content, share it with someone who needs to shift their financial mindset and start seeing debt as a springboard to success, not as an obstacle. See you in the next video.